Joe Franklin saying good morning, everybody. Good morning, world and beyond the world. And I am with you today, wandering through today musical memory lane with two of the giants, two people who deserve the recognition they're going to get today. Joe DeReese and Charles Ryan. Joe DeReese and Charles Ryan, two of the golden agers of show business. You're going to love meeting Mr. DeReese and Mr. Ryan. Today, the Billy Shepard and Judy Jordan shower singers, and a little segment on ventriloquism previewed today and done much more officially tomorrow that you will not soon forget. Mr. Alan Ende, who's the world's foremost authority on collectibles of ventriloquism and related memorabilia, which means the golden age of Charlie McCarthy and Edgar Bergen and Mortimer Snerd and Paul Winchell and Jerry Mahoney and Lamb Chop and Sherry Lewis. Now, I want to tell you, this is our little opening monologue. This one, I think, even before I introduce a man named Alan Ende officially, and he is the world's foremost authority on ventriloquism and ventriloquism memorabilia, I want to tell Alan that in a movie which I love to watch called The Great Gabbo,
oh sure,
with Erich von Stroheim, the ventriloquist, Alan, becomes so immersed in his dummy's character that he actually assumes or becomes in his own persona,
figure, exactly,
his dummy's character. I was wondering, is that even remotely possible in true life? Could that happen? That's kind of a mental or psychological problem.
I don't know of any cases per se where that has happened. It's possible, but I don't know if I've never heard of anything even documented remotely where a ventriloquist has assumed the character of his figure or vice versa. But that's always a popular premise for ventriloquist shows and movies, and that's the basic concept involved, is that schizophrenic nature of the ventriloquist.
It's good theatrical license, right?
It sure is. That it is, yeah.
This young man has starred, as many of you out there know because you've seen the show, or co-starred or been featured in Sugar Babies. His name is Alan Ende, and that run ended only recently for you, I read somewhere, right?
Right.
You enjoyed it?
At the end of the summer, October 4th. It was great, yeah. I had a lot of fun doing that.
Alan, if you watch my program, you know, and people out there know that I've interviewed every kind of collector from A to Z, every category, every division, every classification of collector, but I've never, now we have the letter V, I've never had a ventriloquism collector. May we ask you, and don't be in a hurry, Alan Ende, because to me this is the most fascinating thing in many a moon for me. What sparked your interest in, well, A, what do you do, and what motivated your interest?
Well, I have to say, back in 1977, when I came back from college,
right,
I went to University of Miami, and I was looking for something different in my act. And I ended up in Manhattan at an antique magic store. It's Jack Flosso's Antique Magic Store. And I happened to see this figure right here in a museum that he had. And I was very interested in that. And to make a long story short, I ended up purchasing it. And I delved into the history of the figure. And I located the person's widow who owned this.
This is called what?
This is the only two-headed figure in the world. It's called Flip and Pip. And that goes back to the days of vaudeville. It was owned by a guy named Roy Douglas and carved by a guy from Brooklyn named John Carroll. And that's the only two-headed figure in the world, and it's all original as you see it.
When you say figure, is that a dummy? Is that a ventriloquist?
Right. In the trade, they call them figures,
right,
ventriloquist figures, that type of thing, but they're pretty much dummies for the most part.
And that was the beginning of your collection.
Exactly.
So your archives now covers what, Alan?
Oh, I have books that date back to the 1700s. I have pieces that were owned by Rudy Vallee. A couple of dummies that were owned by Edgar Bergen, some of his personal items as well.
Would you say, Alan, that Edgar Bergen was the ventriloquist most exposed to the public?
I would say so. During the 30s and 40s, he had to be the ventriloquist who had the most notoriety, and probably in the 50s, it was Paul Winchell.
But how would you, Alan Ende, because I happen to be a fan of Edgar Bergen, even though I know that he moved his lips.
Right, of course.
But on the radio, it didn't matter. But how would you rate Edgar Bergen as a pure, unadulterated ventriloquist? And don't be in a hurry, because I just love this subject.
Right. All around, he had to be the greatest that ever lived.
Really?
His showmanship, his characters, his material, just all around. Edgar Bergen had a great line. when people used to ask him why he moved his lips so much,
Right.
he would say, "If you're watching my lips, you're missing the show."
He was great, huh?
So that pretty much summed that up. He was a tremendous showman.
He was here on my show at least 9 times. Twice with Candace Bergen.
Oh, yeah. She's
Beautiful.
remarkable.
Nice family.
Beautiful lady. Beautiful lady.
But he had great vocal agility, right?
Tremendous vocal agility. Like I say, tremendous characters, tremendous showmanship.
So if you had to if you had to select the most artful ventriloquist of all time, you being the expert on the subject, you would name Edgar Bergen.
Edgar Bergen was the dean of ventriloquists.
How about down memory lane with some more name, one by one?
Oh, let's see. Well, very few people realize that Rudy Vallee used to tinker with ventriloquism. And I met Rudy Vallee back, I'd say about 5-6 years ago, by way of his opening act. And I got in touch with him, and I flew into Burbank. He picked me up at the airport. Was wearing a blue leisure suit, a baseball cap, had a station wagon parked outside, took me to his estate, Rudy, Vallee, and he had 3 ventriloquist figures, of which 2 I ended up purchasing from him.
And I've got some
That
photographs
I own
here
today, that's right.
to prove it. Ladies and gentlemen, from the archives of Mr. Alan Ende. I'll show these on the screen, and you tell us what we're watching, Alan, as we take a trip down Rudy Vallee's
Right,
memory.
here's Rudy Vallee with a figure that he called linoleum. That figure is considered to be the greatest figure ever built. It has about 60 mechanical movements. The hair stands up, the eyes go in every direction. He has a sneer, he has a tongue, the ears wiggle, he smokes, smoke comes out of his ears.
Wow.
He does quite a few things. That was his opening act on the left. That was Bob Neller from Wisconsin.
Miller?
Bob Neller, N-E-L-L-E-R.
Right.
And that was his figure, Reggie, which I also own, by the way. And that, too, is a McElroy figure. Figures are always named after the person who built them, like a Stradivarius. So that's a McElroy figure as well.
Would you ever have a museum of this eventually?
Oh, yeah. Ultimately, I would like to have some type of museum where people can come and see everything on display at one time.
Memories of Rudy Vallee as a ventriloquist.
There you go. That's Rudy Vallee back with his 3 figures. The girl on the left was called Sally Ann, and I own her as well. She has also about 12 movements. The nose lights up on her, and the eyebrows go up and down. The hair stands up. And on the far right is a figure that he called Ollie, which was supposed to be like Mortimer Snerd's cousin.
You know, when I was a kid listening to Edgar Bergen on the radio, I really thought that Charlie McCarthy and Mortimer Snerd were live.
Were real people,
Yeah.
sure. That was all part of the illusion. And in order to put that over on radio was really incredible. And then, of course, when television came along and you actually saw Charlie McCarthy and Mortimer Snerd and Effie Clinker, which was his 3rd figure, the illusion was just tremendous.
I've always been kind of curious, Alan, where and when and how. I'm going to show more pictures, but
Okay.
So far as how the noble and entertaining and amusing art of ventriloquism came into being. You got any historical...
Oh, yeah. Well, supposedly ventriloquism started way back, probably in the prehistoric times, when it was thought that animals, for preservation's sake, were able to throw their voice so that, dinosaurs or something of larger prey wouldn't attack them. So that's really, it goes back as far as that.
I am chatting with the world expert on ventriloquism. A lot of people can't say that word,
That's a tough word. That's the first problem. If you can't say the word, you can't do it.
What's the substitute?
Ventriloquist, voice throwing, that's pretty much it. Puppeteering wouldn't have too much to do with ventriloquism because it involves the vocal
How
illusion as well.
popular is ventriloquism as a career for young? Because when I was a kid, I would see these ads all the time.
Right.
I think it's a rapidly vanishing kind of ad. They used to say, learn to throw your voice for 10 cents, send in
Right.
10 cents or 25 cents for the dummy, but I don't see those ads anymore. Is it a vanishing species?
Well, somewhat. You don't see the ads as much, and you don't see as many ventriloquists as you used to. But there's still a call for a good ventriloquist as far as the novelty act goes, and there's still quite a bit of work out there.
Okay.
So I wouldn't say it's really a dying art. It comes and goes every
Right.
few years.
We're remembering Rudy Vallee not as the vagabond lover, not as the matinee idol of our flapper days, but as the ventriloquist. We are now seeing...
Oh, yeah, that's Rudy Vallee once again with his figure. The figure is on the left, by the way. Linoleum, and I guess that was a fan of something. on the right side.
Yeah.
When I met him, I picked up, he had a museum himself in his guest house, and it was just incredible. He was so meticulous. He had things filed away in a library that everything was just at his fingertips. His entire career was just at his fingertips. Every radio show he ever did, every television show, every script was completely filed and meticulously in place.
I was in Rudy's house many a time, and
that...
I saw a few of his dummies. He promised to make me an honorary dummy. He never,
he did the same thing for me, too.
Never kept that promise.
He did with me.
This is?
Oh, yeah. When I purchased the two figures from Rudy, he pretty much signed them over to me to make it very official. And that's a letter on his own letterhead. There we go. And just pretty much making it official to verify the fact that those were the two figures that he owns, and signed over to me.
I am officially making it official right now that on tomorrow's show, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to show you some of the artifacts from the Alan Ende Museum. We're going to see Alan, if he's in the mood, as a ventriloquist. And this is, I'll say it again, one of the most eerie and fascinating. Of course, I want to get some flash reactions tomorrow of some of your favorites like Sherry Lewis and Paul Winchell and Jimmy Nelson, whose puppet, whose dummy was called?
Danny O'Day and Farfel.
Danny O'Day and Farfel. How about Jackie Mason? If Jackie Mason had a puppet, you'd call it matzo ball or farfel.
Matzo ball or something like that, sure, yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Creplock, something.
And Creplock. And the brief intermission and the messages at this point go exactly like this as we tell you. This is not the ending, but the beginning of Alan Ende. Stay with us.
New York and Connecticut. You're watching Channel 9, WWOR TV.